He thought you were going to be predictable, easy to understand, just another woman who falls for the same tired tricks. But then you did something he never saw coming. You showed him a level of self-respect he was not prepared to deal with. Most men assume they get women. They think they can charm their way through life without ever being held to a real standard. But then a woman like you shows up, disciplined, self-controlled, impossible to manipulate, and suddenly everything they believed about women falls apart. He never imagined that his usual charm, the practiced lines, the soft voice, the well-timed compliments would meet a woman who simply does not move. He's used to women reacting, opening up, softening the moment a man says all the right things. But you're not like that. You've learned that words are the cheapest currency in modern dating, and you refuse to invest your emotions in something that costs the other person nothing. Where others hear promises, you look for intention. Where others get carried away by romantic attention, you stay grounded. That alone shakes him, because your steady, calm response, your lack of reaction, breaks the pattern he normally uses to stay in control. You've trained yourself to recognize emotional bait, the little compliments used to trigger attachment, the sudden deep talks that show up out of nowhere, the short bursts of effort designed to create false closeness. You don't fall for any of that because you've already seen how easy it is for someone to hide their true motives behind pretty language. You stay calm, you watch, you stay centered, not because you're cold, but because you respect yourself enough to wait for actions that match the feeling someone claims to have. This is the moment he realizes he can't hide behind the comfortable role of the smooth talker who never has to prove anything. For the first time, he faces a woman who is immune to performance. And it's not that you don't want affection or connection, you just don't react to anything that doesn't match your values. If he says he cares, you wait for consistency. If he says he's serious, you watch for commitment. If he says he respects you, you pay attention to how he behaves when he thinks you're not watching. You're not motivated by the thrill of being wanted for a moment. You're motivated by clarity about who actually belongs in your life long term. This forces him to face something he rarely faces, the limit of his own emotional maturity, because you're not sitting there hoping to be chosen. You're evaluating, you're noticing, you're measuring, and for the first time he realizes he is the one being examined. The truth is, many men depend on a woman's craving for emotional closeness. They assume if they give enough warmth, enough attention, enough sweet words, she'll begin to depend on them. But you broke that pattern within yourself. You learn to meet your own needs so well that no one can manipulate you through emotional hunger. You don't mix passion with stability. You don't mix attention with intention. And you don't confuse temporary excitement with real connection. This independence unsettles him because it removes all the shortcuts. He cannot enter your life through charm. He must enter through character. You've become the kind of woman who doesn't need a man to feel valuable. That alone makes your presence powerful. When he talks, you listen, but you don't melt. When he compliments you, you appreciate it, but you don't shift your boundaries. When he tries to impress you, you don't get blinded by effort that has no depth behind it. You've developed emotional discipline, a rare kind of strength that refuses to let temporary feelings hijack your judgment. This type of discipline demands something many men aren't used to giving: real authenticity. And authenticity is uncomfortable for anyone who has only survived through surface-level connections. He starts noticing that he cannot predict your reactions. He can't influence your emotions by changing his tone. He can't pull away to make you chase. He can't come closer to make you dependent. You respond with steady energy, controlled emotion, and thoughtful evaluation. Your emotional world is not chaotic. It's organized, guarded, and grounded, and this is where the change begins. Not in you, but in how he sees himself. He starts wondering why his regular approach doesn't work, why his charm feels small around you, why he suddenly feels the need to level up, to show proof, to give effort instead of leaning on his old habits. What surprises him most is that your strength doesn't come from arrogance or emotional walls. It comes from self-awareness. You know who you are, you know what you want, you know what you'll accept and what you'll never make excuses for. You don't bury your expectations. You don't accept emotional laziness. You don't reward inconsistency. And this forces him to step into a version of himself he has never practiced. The version of a man who must actually grow, not just impress. Because the truth is, you're not hard to get. You're intentional. You're not closed off. You're selective. You're not disinterested. You're simply not willing to throw your heart into the hands of someone who hasn't earned it. He realizes that if he wants you, he must rise, not manipulate. He must build, not charm. He must show, not talk. And this realization shakes him because very few women have ever demanded that from him, not with words, but through the quiet strength of refusing to be moved by anything less than sincerity. You've shown him a version of womanhood that intimidates weak men but inspires strong ones. A version that cannot be influenced by flattery but can be moved by integrity. And that's why he never expected someone like you, because you are the woman who changed the entire dynamic simply by refusing to play the old game. He never expected you to walk away the moment his behavior turned inconsistent. Most women are taught to wait, to hope, to believe that mixed signals might someday turn into something real, but you don't live in that fantasy. You learn through experience that inconsistency is the first sign of emotional immaturity, and you refuse to attach yourself to anyone who can't even anchor their own intentions. When his words went one way and his actions pointed in another, you didn't argue, you didn't beg, you didn't chase, you simply stepped back. That one silent choice shook him more than any emotional reaction ever could. You understand that inconsistency is not confusion, it's a choice. A man who truly wants you will not make you guess. He won't disappear and return in cycles. He won't show you affection today and indifference tomorrow. He won't make you feel like you're competing with his ego or his distractions. And because you know this so clearly, you answer mixed signals with something he never expected. Distance. You don't punish him. You don't try to make him jealous. You don't try to teach him a lesson. You simply remove your presence. That level of self-respect is something he wasn't prepared for. The reason your absence hits harder than your presence is because he wasn't used to women who hold themselves to such a high standard. He assumed that if he pulled away, you'd lean in. If he delayed, you'd wait. If he tossed crumbs, you'd build a meal out of them. But you weren't raised by desperation. You weren't shaped by fear of losing someone. You trained yourself to respond with strength over panic, clarity over wishful thinking, and boundaries over excuses. And that emotional maturity broke every unconscious pattern he relied on. When he started acting hot and cold, you didn't try harder, you got quieter. When he took hours or days to reply, you didn't double text, you kept living your life. When he gave minimal effort, you didn't overcompensate. You let the connection fade on its own, and that shocked him. Your silence was louder than most people's reactions. He realized you weren't trying to win him. You weren't racing for his attention. You weren't afraid of losing him. You were simply protecting yourself from losing your peace. And the more you stepped back, the more he had to face the truth behind his inconsistency. Because inconsistency always hides something: a lack of seriousness, a lack of direction, a lack of emotional control, or a lack of respect. He thought he could hide behind unpredictability, but your distance exposed his weakness, not through anger, but through quiet indifference. Nothing reveals a man's real intentions like how he behaves when he realizes he can no longer play with your emotions. You understand something most people never figure out. Consistency is not a privilege, it's the bare minimum, and when someone fails to meet the minimum, you don't negotiate. You exit. This mindset elevates your life in a way that makes you untouchable to men who rely on confusion to keep control. Your boundaries aren't a threat, they're a mirror. A man either sees his shortcomings reflected there, or he sees his potential. And the moment you walked away, he saw something he wasn't ready to face. that he treated a high-value woman like she wouldn't notice her own worth. That truth is what hurt him the most. What stunned him was the ease with which you left. No dramatic goodbye, no emotional breakdowns, no begging for answers. You didn't need closure, you didn't need an explanation. You saw the signs and chose self-respect over self-sacrifice. That kind of strength is rare. It's powerful. It forces a man to reflect not just on how he treated you, but on who he has become. And the irony is this: your absence taught him what your presence never could. He realized inconsistency cost him a woman who would have shown him loyalty, depth, and genuine care. He realized too late that a woman who refuses mixed signals is a woman who demands emotional maturity, and emotional maturity was something he never expected to actually offer. Your decision to walk away was never about him. It was always about honoring yourself. It was always about protecting your peace, and that alone is what made you stand apart from the rest. He never imagined that your sense of purpose would outweigh the relationship. Not because he believed you lacked drive, but because he thought his presence alone would be enough to become the center of your world. He was familiar with women who gave him space before giving it to themselves. Women who shifted their schedules, paused their goals, and rearranged their priorities the moment things became romantic. But you didn't bend for him. You didn't shrink your life to fit his needs. You didn't dim your ambition to soothe his insecurities. You kept moving with direction, intention, and structure, and that alone disturbed what he expected from you. You live with a mission that stretches far beyond romance. You have goals that push you, responsibilities that keep you grounded, and dreams that require your focus. You've built a life with depth and alignment, a life that doesn't stop simply because someone new entered it. And when he realized you weren't waiting for him to guide your path because you were already guiding it yourself, he felt something unfamiliar: accountability. You made him see clearly that if he wanted a place in your world, he had to bring value, not noise. What unsettled him the most was how naturally you carried this purpose-filled mindset. You never tried to prove anything. You didn't boast about being independent. You didn't pretend to be strong. You lived it. You woke up with discipline. You moved toward your goals without needing reminders. You handled your commitments with a seriousness he rarely saw in anyone else. And suddenly, he wasn't just watching you. He was measuring himself against you. He started asking questions he had never asked before. Am I creating anything meaningful? Am I actually growing? Am I someone she could respect in the long run? This reflection wasn't something he planned. It was something your presence quietly demanded. When he saw that your life didn't revolve around him, he realized he could no longer rely on charm, affection, or chemistry to stay important. He had to earn his place by stepping up to your level, not dragging you down to his. This was a shift he never saw coming. Other women made him feel important by making him the center of their emotional world. You made him feel challenged because you refused to place him above your purpose. Where others paused their lives to move at his pace, you kept going, whether he was beside you or not. And that calm, steady movement showed him the difference between attachment and alignment. He was surprised by how effortlessly you balanced your emotional life with your personal mission. You didn't treat love as a replacement for purpose, and you didn't let affection interfere with your obligations. You were able to care deeply about someone and still put your growth first. This maturity revealed a type of strength he wasn't prepared to face, because a woman with purpose is never desperate. She doesn't hold on tightly. She doesn't chase for attention. She doesn't lose herself in someone else's identity. She knows who she is with or without love, and that scares men who depend on emotional dependency to feel powerful. Your devotion to your own life forced him to see his lack of direction. He began noticing the empty spaces in his routine, the procrastination he made excuses for, the dreams he kept delaying, and the discipline he lacked. Being close to you made him realize your standards weren't based on shallow preferences. They were built on the life you were creating, and if he wanted to be part of that world, he had to grow too. Not because you demanded it, but because the version of you he admired would never match with a man who stayed in the same place. He didn't expect your ambition to become a filter, but that's exactly what it was. It separated the men who admired you from a distance from the men strong enough to stand next to you. It exposed who was threatened by your strength and who was encouraged by it. It showed who wanted to evolve with you and who wanted you to step down to fit their comfort zone. And most importantly, it revealed something he wasn't ready to admit, that a woman with purpose cannot be kept by a man without direction. What shocked him even more wasn't your independence, it was your balance. You could love deeply without losing yourself. You could support someone without abandoning your own journey. You could show affection and still protect your ambition, and that rare mix placed you far above the ordinary woman he assumed you would be. He realized your purpose wasn't meant to compete with him. It was meant to add to the relationship. You weren't trying to overshadow him. You were simply inviting him to grow with you, and if he couldn't rise, you wouldn't slow down. You wouldn't wait. You wouldn't dim the intensity of your path just to match someone walking half-heartedly beside you. You would keep moving forward because your purpose was shaped long before he arrived, and it will stay with you long after he is gone. That is what truly makes you different. He never expected your honesty to be this clear, this steady, and this unshakable. In a world where many soften their truth to avoid discomfort, you speak with a clarity that cuts through all the pretending, not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you refuse to build relationships on illusions. Your honesty isn't loud, aggressive, or dramatic. It is calm, steady, and grounded in integrity. And that kind of truth can unsettle a man who is used to being misunderstood, not challenged. He wasn't prepared for someone who listens fully, observes deeply, and then speaks with a directness that leaves no room for emotional shortcuts. You don't sugarcoat your thoughts just to protect his ego. You don't hide concerns under silence until they turn into resentment. You don't pretend things are fine when they clearly aren't. Instead, you express what you feel, what you notice, and what you need with a firmness that demands respect. You speak truth not to win arguments, but to keep relationships clean, free of hidden bitterness, unspoken tension, and unclear motives. And this level of clarity forces him to look at truths he would normally avoid. Your words act like a mirror, showing him not who he imagines himself to be, but who he actually is through his actions. Most people avoid confrontation because they connect it with conflict. You treat confrontation as alignment. You believe truth is the foundation of everything worth building. Trust, connection, commitment. So when something feels wrong, you don't ignore it. You address it, not with accusation, but with honest observation. This pattern doesn't match your words. This behavior doesn't look like someone who is ready for something serious. This is what I see, and this is what it means. These statements shake him because they aren't emotional explosions. They are grounded truths. You're not trying to blame him. You're trying to understand the reality behind his actions. He never thought he would be held accountable in such a calm way. Dramatic reactions are easy to dismiss. Quiet tolerance is easy to take advantage of, but your honesty is impossible to escape. It doesn't attack, it reveals. And when a man's behavior is revealed without anger, he can't hide behind excuses. He can't say you overreacted. He can't pretend you misunderstood. Your clarity removes confusion and forces him to confront his own habits. What surprises him the most is the neutrality in your voice when you speak truth. You are not emotional, defensive, or desperate. You are steady, and that steadiness shows how much you value yourself. You don't fear losing someone by speaking truth. You fear losing yourself by staying silent, and that is what separates you from others who water down their truth just to keep the peace. You already know that peace created through avoidance isn't real peace, it's delay. And you refuse to live in delayed truth. Your honesty also shows him the difference between criticism and clarity. Criticism attacks the person. Clarity addresses the behavior. You don't label him, you describe the pattern. You don't shame him, you point out the impact. You don't force change, you simply reveal reality. And if he chooses not to grow, not to reflect, not to adjust, your honesty gives you the strength to walk away gracefully, knowing you never hid from the truth. He begins to understand that your honesty isn't just about him, it's your whole way of living. You live truthfully, you communicate with intention, you build connections through transparency, not fantasy, and that sets a standard he wasn't used to. Many men are comfortable with half-truths, unspoken expectations, and emotional guessing games, but you are the opposite of ambiguity. Anyone who stands with you must rise to full clarity, because you don't do almost. You don't do maybe. You don't do I didn't want to say it. You walk with a kind of integrity that demands emotional responsibility. Your honesty is powerful because it comes from self-respect. You don't need outside approval. You don't fear temporary discomfort. You don't depend on how someone reacts to decide whether your truth is valid. You speak up because you know truth is the strongest filter. A man who is threatened by your honesty is not ready for your depth. A man who feels attacked by your clarity is not ready for your maturity, but a man who feels challenged and inspired by it, he has potential. And deep inside, he realizes something surprising. Your honesty was never a weapon, it was a gift. It gives him the chance to grow, to reflect, to align what he says with what he does. It gives him the opportunity to become someone he respects, not just someone admired by others. Whether he accepts that opportunity is his choice. The truth remains the same. You will continue speaking with clarity. You will continue living with integrity. And you will never apologize for being honest, because honesty isn't something you practice. It's part of who you are. And that alone makes you unlike anyone he has ever known. He never expected your standards to be this steady, this unmoving, and this firmly rooted in self-respect. Many people talk about standards, but they bend the moment loneliness whispers or emotions take over. But you are not built that way. Your standards aren't strategies, they're principles. They aren't walls to block love. They are filters meant to keep the wrong people away. And he never thought he'd meet a woman who stands so strongly in what she deserves that no amount of charm, chemistry, or temporary affection could make her settle. From the beginning, your standards were clear, not because you announced them loudly, but because you lived them naturally. You never told him directly that you expected consistency. You simply showed it through the way you carried yourself. You didn't ask for respect with words. You demonstrated it in your actions. You never warned him not to play games. You just refused to join in. And that surprised him because he was used to women adjusting their boundaries based on emotions, not on steady values. You, however, remained the same whether you liked him a little or a lot. You were steady, grounded, sincere, and calm. Your standards didn't scare him because they were too high. They intimidated him because they revealed the areas of himself he had been avoiding for years. They showed him where he lacked discipline, where he lacked direction, and where he lacked seriousness. Being around you felt like a quiet test, not because you judged him, but because he judged himself in your presence. When he didn't follow through on his promises, your reaction wasn't anger or drama, it was distance. When he came with excuses instead of real effort, you didn't argue, you simply showed disinterest. When he tried to offer the bare minimum, you didn't fight, complain, or try to convince him to do more. You simply stopped giving him access to your energy. That simple, calm withdrawal was more powerful than any emotional confrontation. You never needed to shout, threaten, or prove your worth. Your standards spoke for you every time. They told him you wouldn't accept mixed signals. They told him you wouldn't entertain inconsistency. They told him you wouldn't tolerate emotional laziness. They told him clearly that you would never trade your peace for someone's potential. And that kind of certainty is rare. It's strong. It's something that forces anyone who wants to be close to you to grow. He began to understand that being with you wasn't about impressing you with charm or temporary effort. It was about improving himself. He couldn't coast through the connection. He couldn't rely on attraction alone. He couldn't use sweet words as a shortcut. Your standards silently required him to show real responsibility, real sincerity, and real emotional presence. They required him to put in genuine work, not short-lived enthusiasm, and that's when the truth finally hit him. You weren't searching for perfection. You were hoping for consistency, effort, and alignment. But even that was something he wasn't used to giving. What surprised him most was that your standards didn't change, even when your feelings grew. Most people lower their boundaries once they start caring more, hoping that the connection will make up for the lack of alignment. But your heart didn't control your standards. Your principles did. You could care deeply about someone and still walk away if he couldn't match the foundation you lived by. And that kind of emotional strength was something he hardly ever experienced. Because for you, attachment alone is not enough. Chemistry alone is not enough. Potential alone is not enough. You require reality, consistency, and truth. He realized your standards weren't about expecting too much from others. They were about expecting the best from yourself. You would never allow yourself to stay in situations that drain you. You wouldn't entertain relationships that confuse you. You wouldn't settle for someone who didn't show up fully. And this unwavering self-respect made him face a question he couldn't ignore. Am I willing to become the kind of man who truly deserves a woman like her? Your standards became his quiet measurement of his intentions, the test of his consistency, and the mirror that showed his maturity. Every time he tried to push a boundary, you kept it firm. Every time he tried to take without giving, you stopped the pattern. Every time he offered shortcuts, you chose the long, lonely road instead of temporary comfort. And ironically, that is what made him see your worth even more clearly, because men don't value what comes easily. They respect what requires effort, and you are a woman who requires effort, not because you make life difficult, but because you make relationships meaningful. In the end, your standards taught him a lesson he never expected. A strong woman doesn't demand a man to rise. She simply doesn't stay where he chooses to stay low. And whether he chose to grow or walk away, one truth became too powerful to ignore. You are not the kind of woman who loses herself just to keep someone else. You remain firm, you stay true, and you never lower your standards for anyone, not even for the man you deeply care about. He never expected you to love from a place of strength instead of fear. Most people love with fear sitting quietly beneath their emotions. Fear of losing someone, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. But you are different. You love with intention, with clarity, and with maturity. Your love is steady and grounded. It comes from a full heart, not an empty one searching for completion. And that changed everything, because he wasn't ready for a woman whose love is powerful precisely because she doesn't need anyone to survive. You never cling, you never beg, you never chase. You don't sacrifice your dignity in the name of affection. You love freely, but you never abandon yourself in the process. When you give your heart, it isn't blind or reckless. It's thoughtful, calm, and wise. It comes from self-awareness, and this kind of love can't be manipulated, taken for granted, or used as leverage. For a man who is used to relationships where high emotions overshadow judgment, your style of loving is beautiful, but also intimidating. He starts to notice your rare ability to care deeply without losing your clarity. Even when your feelings deepen, your standards remain solid. Even as you grow attached, you don't ignore your boundaries. Even when you feel drawn to someone, you don't accept behavior that lowers your value. This balance between softness and strength challenges him in a way he wasn't expecting. It makes him understand that to be loved by you is to be held to a higher version of himself. Your love isn't loud, chaotic, or desperate. It is steady, mature, and full of intention. You don't love to fill a void. You don't love to escape loneliness. You don't love because you're afraid to be alone. You love because you choose to love, and choice is the strongest form of affection. It means you don't stay out out of fear. You stay because the connection aligns with your soul. It means you don't tolerate disrespect because you fear losing someone. You hold your boundaries because losing yourself is not an option. This is why he wasn't prepared for someone like you. He thought love in your life would work the same way it does for many people, something that makes them bend too quickly, compromise too soon, or abandon their identity just to keep someone close. Instead, he found a woman who can give affection without losing who she is, a woman who can be soft without being weak, a woman who can offer love while still guarding her emotional space with wisdom. Your strength forced him to face his own patterns. Had he been loving from fear, from ego, from insecurity, or inconsistency, your stability in love made him see how fragile his approach had been. He realized he often used affection to feel important, to gain validation, or to secure comfort. But with you, those habits didn't work. You didn't respond to half-hearted effort. You didn't panic when he pulled away to test you. You didn't chase when he became distant. You stayed calm, patient, and grounded. You loved with emotional intelligence. Even more surprising to him was the way you protected your heart without building walls. You don't shut down emotionally. You don't avoid vulnerability. You simply choose wisely where your vulnerability goes. You know when to open up and when to pull back. You know when to invest and when to detach. You can sense when someone is capable of your depth and when someone is only fit for surface level connection. This kind of discernment made him realize that your love isn't something a man can casually stumble into. It's something he must be ready to receive. And when you love someone, your love becomes a force. It brings strength, not chaos. It inspires growth, not dependency. It pushes a man to evolve, not to stay comfortable. Your love becomes a quiet mirror, showing him what he can become if he chooses to rise. But what sets your love apart even more is your ability to walk away with the same strength you give. If someone mishandles your heart, betrays your trust, or refuses to rise to emotional maturity, you don't fall apart. You release. You don't break. You detach with grace. You don't chase closure. You move forward with clarity. And that is what he never saw coming. He thought love would make you dependent. Instead, it made you stronger. He thought affection would weaken your boundaries. Instead, it reinforced them. He thought your emotions would cloud your judgment. Instead, your judgment guided your emotions. He learned one of the hardest truths a man can learn about a woman like you. Your love is a privilege, not a possession. A blessing, not a guarantee. A force that lifts, not something to control. And once he experienced the rare strength of a woman who loves without losing herself, he understood something with complete certainty. If he ever loses you, he will never find another woman who loves with the same depth, the same honesty, and the same unshakable strength. You are not like other women because you built yourself into something exceptional. And the moment he realized that, his entire understanding of love and relationships changed. You didn't demand respect, you lived it. You didn't ask him to step up, you inspired it. And whether he stayed or walked away, one truth remained unshakable. You were always the woman who stood strong in who she is.